Hello everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending upon when you are watching this video lecture. As we all are aware, the overall process of computation of total income has many steps which included the determination of residential status and then classifying the income under different heads of income, that is salaries, income from house property, PGBP, capital gains, income from other sources, and by applying various deductions or exemptions within those heads of incomes, we find out what is the income arising from each of those heads. After aggregating all those incomes from different heads, we need to apply clubbing provisions, and we need to also apply set off and carry forward provisions if any applicable. Then what we get is called gross total income. From that, deductions under chapter 6a will be available. If we give those deductions, what we get is called total income. This is the overall process of the computation of total income of any SSE. We know this. In that, determination of residential status, heads of income, aggregation, clubbing, set off and carry forward means till the computation of gross total income, we have discussed all the provisions related to them. Now, let us focus on deductions available from the gross total income. Broadly, we can call them Chapter 6A deductions, or casually we can call them Section 80 deductions also. That's okay. So, what are these deductions and how much will be available to different types of SSEs? Let us understand those things. And particularly, when it comes to these deductions, we should understand these are given after calculating the gross total income. And already the gross total income is computed in accordance with the provisions of the Act. And what does it mean that gross total income is computed in accordance with the provisions of the Act? It means all the deductions under appropriate computation sections have already been given. These deductions are not the deductions we are talking now. These are the ones which are available in respective heads of incomes, like for example in salaries section 16, like for example in income from house property section 24. Similarly, so many sections in PGPP, like that. Whatever the appropriate deductions are available or exemptions are available in those heads of incomes, those are already given. And whatever, if at all, any other person's incomes are includable under section 60 to 64, those are already included. The intra-head or inter-head losses have already been adjusted. Unabsorbed business losses or unabsorbed depreciation have already been set off. After doing all this, what we arrive at is called as gross total income. That is what gross total income means. And from that gross total income, the deductions that are available are what we call as section 6A, sorry, chapter 6A deductions. We can call them as chapter 6A deductions, or popularly we can just call section 80 deductions. But technically the correct word is the deductions what we are going to learn now are chapter 6A deductions. Of course, all of the deductions we are not going to discuss. Those which are in our syllabus at intermediate level we will discuss. There are so many deductions which are not included in our syllabus also, which will be discussed at a later level, that is final level. But particularly when we talk about these chapter 6A deductions, we need to broadly classify these deductions. We can broadly classify these deductions into two categories. There are certain deductions which are available on the basis of some payments, means the SSE has paid something. Payment can happen because of many reasons. Payment could be an investment also, or a payment could be an expenditure also. I is not income there, that is investment. Or payment could be an expenditure also. Any of the payments that the SSE makes, depending upon the conditions that the SSE satisfies, the SSE may be eligible for certain deductions. So this category is called deductions in respect of certain payments. First, let us look at that. Later, there will be some deductions which will be available in respect of certain incomes earned by the SSE. We will come to that portion later. But now, after the computation of gross total income, the SSE is eligible for certain deductions under Section 80 or Chapter 6A because he has invested some money somewhere or because he has spent some money somewhere. According to whatever the case may be, the SC has paid something, and because these sections allow him some deductions, he will be eligible to claim those deductions. And to start with, one of the most important sections of all this discussion is Section 80C. It is in relation to investment into certain assets. Generally, this is investment related deduction. Then, sir, why the investment related deductions is given to the SSEs by the government? Simple logic, because the government wants to promote the investments by the SSEs. So the people should invest more is the idea. Why they will invest? Of course, they can invest if they want some good return. That anyway they will do in their capacities. But if the tax benefits are there, people will be definitely motivated, they will be lured to invest more. That is why certain tax benefits are given for investments into certain types of assets. Once again, we don't have to take investment into a very literal sense. It could be an investment also, it could be sometimes even an expenditure also, which can be eligible for a deduction under Section 80C. But in general, those are investments. So what are those investments or what are those expenses if the SSE has actually invested or spent? Irrespective of that, he has paid money for something. Some money has gone out of the SSE's pockets. Then he is eligible for some deductions under Section 80C. But when? When those deductions will be available is what we have to study. But before that, we have to directly understand to whom this particular Section 80C deduction is applicable. It is available only to an individual or HUF. Of course, mostly our SSC in the examinations will be an individual. So definitely there will be an application of this deduction section in our exam questions. That is guaranteed, pakka. All that we need to know is what are the investments which the SC should make in order to claim this deduction? Are there any conditions attached to that investment? If at all there are any conditions, we should know them. And how much is the maximum permissible deduction under 80C, which is already given here. So what is the maximum permissible deduction under Section 80C is maximum 1,50,000 rupees only. Naturally per annum, naturally for the previous year we are talking. So these are the two things that we should understand and remember before we enter into where the SSE can spend some money or invest some money so that he can claim Section 80C deductions. Once again, the provisions will be elaborated here, which will be given in a much elaborated way, but we don't need all that. We can just directly go to the point, straight to the point. What is the investment? Are there any conditions? Amount of investment maximum is already known to us, that is 1,50,000. And by the way, this 1,50,000 is aggregate of all the list of investments mentioned in 80C, not that each point has a 1,50,000 possible deduction. No. So all points put together, all investments put together, whatever the choice of the SSC may be, according to whatever he chooses to invest in, if the SSC has paid the following amounts, he might be eligible for a deduction under Section 80C up to a maximum of 1,50,000 rupees, provided the SSC is an individual or HUF. That's it. Now, from now onwards, unless there are any conditions, we don't need to worry about the details of them. Just what we need is the headings. So one of the payments what SSC can claim deduction for is premium paid in respect of a life insurance policy. That's it. If the SSC pays any premium, naturally when? During the previous year, on any life insurance policy. Life insurance policy of whom? On the life of whom? On the life of his friends, neighbors? No. Not that case. On the life of the individual, spouse, or any child, and in the case of HUF, any member thereof. If any LIC policy, insurance policy, if I say LIC policy, don't take it as LIC, it is only a usage. Now there are so many private insurance companies, all of them are okay. There is nothing restricted about with whom this life insurance policy has to be taken. So if I generally use LIC, that does not mean LIC. Specifically, if I use LIC, that is LIC. But as a general statement, if we say LIC policy basically has become like a Xerox copy, like Colgate toothpaste, like that. We are used to that. So LIC policy is not about a Life Insurance Corporation of India policy. We are talking about life insurance policy. So that is the life insurance policy on the life of the individual, spouse, or the children of the SSC. In case of HF, any member of the HF, on the life of them, the policy can be taken and premium is paid during the previous year by the SSC. Then, whatever the amount of premium may be, can be claimed as deduction under Section 80C, subject to a maximum. Always we don't have to refer to the overall restriction on the entire amount that can be claimed under Section 80C is 1,50,000. So that should be always back of the mind. Every time we don't have to remember that. That should be definitely remembered on a broader basis. So like this also here, if an SSC pays an insurance premium of, let us say, 1,80,000 rupees, so that's fine, he can do that. But he can claim a deduction of maximum only 1,50,000. So that restriction is always there, not only for this first point. We just first point, there are so many points ahead of this under Section 80C. So first point is what? Premium paid on LIC policy, that means life insurance policy by the SSC on the life of individual, spouse, or children of the SSC. That's it. Other things and all we don't need. Endowment policy. What is a life policy? What is endowment policy? Those are all nonsensical things. We don't need to go into life insurance policy. That's all. Endowment also is life insurance only. So that premium paid will be eligible for Section 80C. As simple as that. Now, there is nothing directly related with the 80C, but because the topic has come, we have to also discuss exemption on the receipts from the life insurance policy under Section 1010D. There is one more exemption under Section 1010D. Any sum received under a life insurance policy, including the sum allocated by way of bonus on such policy, shall not be included in the total income of a person. That is there in Section 1010D already. According to 1010D, life insurance policy proceeds are not taxable. They are fully exempt. That is exemption. When, sir? When SSC is receiving the life insurance policy proceeds, that is exemption. That is different. But what are we talking in 80C? This is not exemption. This is deduction. But why this deduction? Is SC receiving anything? No. He is paying. What is paying? Premium is paying on the life insurance policy. So periodically the SSCs will pay premium that is eligible for Section 80C deduction. And not only that, after the policy gets matured, whatever the proceeds the SSC receives also will be exempt under Section 1010D. But both of them have certain common points and conditions. That is why both are mentioned in the same place. This following table will summarize both 1010D also and 80C also, which are subject to similar conditions, right? So how much, what conditions are there, what are the types of restrictions are there in order to claim the exemption under 1010D or in order to claim a deduction under 80C? What restrictions are there that we should identify and remember definitely. Let us look at the first category. In respect of the policies issued before 1/4/2003, you should remember that date. The date is important. You may think, it is long back and all. Policy might have been issued before 2003. Policies are normally taken for 25 years, 20 years also. So it is not that long as far as life insurance is concerned. So this date should be remembered. You cannot think that it is not relevant, it is long back and all. No. 1/4/2003 definitely has to be remembered. What is the type of the policy here? The policy is issued before 1/4/2003. Then naturally exemption is available under Section 1010D. And deduction under Section 80C is available only when the premium paid to the extent of 20% of the actual capital sum assured. So that is a restriction you should remember here. What is the restriction? The premium paid should be not exceeding 20% of the sum assured. If a policy is taken for 10 lakhs, the premium paid in any 1 year, periodical premium, should not exceed 2 lakhs rupees at all. That is 20% restriction you should remember for the policies issued before 1/4/2003. Then, what about policies issued after 1/4/2003 but before 31st March 2012? In that case, here exemption is granted when the premium paid exceeds 20% of the actual capital sum assured. Means prior to 1/4/2003, there was no condition for 1010D, but there was a condition for 80C only prior to 1/4/2003. But after 1/4/2003, the same condition has been extended to exemption of 1010D also. There also the condition is same. Condition is what? The capital sum assured, how much ever it may be, the premium cannot exceed 20% of actual capital sum assured. Same condition naturally continued for 80C also till 31st March 2012. Okay, that is 31st March 2012. We can remember that date also. Basically for exemption 1/4/2003, for 80C 31st March 2012 is enough. Why? Because prior to 31st March 2012, whatever it may be, the premium paid cannot exceed 20% of the actual capital sum assured. Sum assured, whatever it may be, the policy amount. On that, the premium paid cannot exceed 20%. And this is applicable for 80C if the policy is issued before 31st March 2012. Whereas for exemption under 1010D, prior to 1/4/2003, there was no condition. From 1/4/2003 onwards till 31st March 2012, there is condition. So that condition is same. There also, the premium payable cannot exceed the actual capital sum assured. That's it. That is about condition for policies prior to 1/4/2012, we can say. Prior to 1/4/2012, the premium paid cannot exceed 20% of sum assured. That's it. That is enough. Okay. Then the period here is a very particular period, that is only for 1 year, 1/4/2012 to 1/4/2013. In that case, the premium paid cannot exceed 10% of the capital sum assured. So that is reduced from 20 to 10. But it was there only for 1 year, that is 2012-13. I think this is a very rare case, particularly if MCQ is asked exactly for a policy issued between 1/4/2012 and 1/4/2013, then you can definitely apply this 10%. But this 10% is not going to be changed for others. Others, there is no difference. But later they realized this could be unfair on some people, where the insured is a person who is suffering from a severe disability, suffering from some diseases which are all mentioned in ITU. We don't need to know those diseases. Just remember that they are suffering from disabilities. That's all. Some disease, some ailment. Not like cough and cold, bigger ones, definitely. So as specified in 80TDB and 80U, whatever the disabilities are mentioned in those sections, if there is a disabled person like that, then that has been increased again from 10 to 15%. So there it is okay. For disabled people, on or after 1/4/2013, if any policy is issued, then the percentage of premium on the sum assured cannot exceed 15% for disabled people. So naturally, if any policy is taken during the previous year or very near past, then we have to remember this 15% for not everybody, for only for disabled people. But what about for others? For others, it is still continuing to be same 10% only. So the point is, what dates are to be remembered here? 1/4/2013 is the date you should definitely remember. From 1/4/2013 onwards, in fact 1/4/2012 also, because even between 1/4/2012 and 1/4/2013, the amount is 10%. So for normal people, you should remember 1/4/2012. For disabled persons, you should remember 1/4/2013. For normal people, normally, generally the SSC will be a normal guy, right? So if that is the case, without any disability and all, you cannot assume that SSC has disability. That will be ridiculous. So for any normal person, general question, 99% of the cases where the question says the SSC has contributed some amount towards the insurance premium for a life insurance policy, and sum assured is so and so, premium paid is so and so, then you have to check. What you have to check? When the policy is issued. If the policy is issued on or after 1/4/2012, then you have to check whether the premium paid is exceeding 10% of sum assured. If so, then this deduction is not available. That's all. Nothing happens. We cannot arrest the SSC and send him to jail or something. Deduction is not available. Deduction is available only if the premium is not exceeding 10% of the capital sum assured if the policy is issued on or after 1/4/2012. If the policy is issued before 1/4/2012, then the capital sum assured and premium should not exceed 20%. That was what we discussed earlier. So let us look at ATC only particularly. If you look at that, you can broadly remember only one date. One date is enough. You don't need all of them. For ATC, what is the date? 1/4/2012. That is the date you should remember for section 80C, 1st April 2012. On or after 1st April 2012, the amount of premium cannot exceed 10% of sum assured. Prior to 1/4/2012, the amount of premium cannot exceed 20% of sum assured. That is the date you should remember for normal people. So what about for disabled persons? For disabled persons, the same thing can be 1/4/2013 for disabled. So for a normal person, the date to be remembered is 1/4/2012. Policies issued after, on or after 1/4/2012, the premium amount should not exceed 10% of the capital sum assured. For the policies issued prior to 1/4/2012, the premium amount should not exceed 20% of the sum assured. That is the normal provision, the core provision that you should remember. Exceptional cases, special cases like disabled persons, you should remember the date 1/4/2013, and 1/4/2013 is only for disabled persons. For the policies issued on or after 1/4/2013, for them the restriction is 15% on the sum assured, but only for 1 year, that is 12 and 13. For the disabled persons, the restriction is 10%. That is a very rare scenario. Already it is rare, and in that it is much rare. But prior to 1/4/2012, same like normal person, 20% should be the maximum amount of premium on the sum assured. That is related to section 80C restriction. So ultimately you have to remember, for a normal person 10% and 20%. For a disabled person, possibilities are 3: 15, 10 or 20. Dates are different. For normal person it is 1/4/2012. For disabled persons it is 1/4/2013. Same things are applicable for exemption also under section 1010D, but for exemption, these restrictions are not applicable if the policies are issued before 1/4/2003. That's it. Before 1/4/2003, if the policy is issued, the restriction is not there on the exemption under section 1010D. The restrictions came into force only after 1/4/2003. Remaining dates are all same for same people and disabled persons also. Same thing applicable for exemption under section 1010D also. So that is the point here to be noted. So percentages and dates are what you have to remember. That is restrictions, by the way. So conditions, definitely these conditions are to be remembered. But otherwise what? Normally if in a question it is given that SC has paid a life insurance premium of 40,000, you give deduction, that's it. There is nothing else to worry about it. If the sum assured is also given, if the date of issue of policy is also given, then definitely all these points will come into picture. So remember these dates well, particularly for a normal person. 1/4/2012, policies issued on or after 1/4/2012, the maximum amount that can be there as paid as premium should be not exceeding 10% of the sum assured. That's it. Disabled persons is a different dates and different amounts. So normally if during the previous year, if the SSC is disabled person, we know that already, because after, on or after 1/4/2013, now the restriction is 15% for disabled persons. That's all. Related to the conditions on which the deduction under 80C and exemption under 1010D are available. That's all. That is a point to be noted. Of course, for computing the sum assured, we should not include any amounts related to the premiums agreed to be returned, or we should not include any benefit by way of bonus. So basically, how much is the actual sum assured, that only should be taken as capital sum assured. Bonus should not be included in that, whereas any premium agreed to be returned also should not be included in that. That is also an exceptional case. What is the meaning of capital sum assured? Same thing. We don't need to again go into the details of that, and other things are all same. So basically that is about ATC deduction related to insurance premium paid on the life of SSC or spouse or children of the SSC. Is this exemption available for amount received under Keyman insurance policy also? Answer is no. They are not exempt. So there is no exemption for Keyman insurance policy. This exemption, whatever we are talking about, is not going to be extended to the Keyman insurance policy. So the exemption under section 1010D, what we are talking about, is not applicable to Keyman insurance policy. That also has a special point, you should remember. And we already know what is a Keyman insurance policy, and we know everything whatever is related to the Keyman insurance policy is taxable. There is no exemption at all. Where is it taxable? That depends upon who received the policy proceeds. If the policy proceeds are received by employee, then the Keyman insurance proceeds will be taxable as salaries. If they are received by the employer, then they will be taxable as PGBP. If they are received by any other person, they are taxable as income from other sources, but they are taxable. There is no exemption available under 1010D for Keyman insurance policy proceeds. That is a point to be noted. Now let us use the same provisions for applying them in this particular illustration too. Compute the eligible deduction under ATC for the assessment year 2021 in respect of the life insurance premium paid by Mr. Ganesh, naturally during the previous year 1920, and the details of the policies are given like this. Look at the dates here, that is also important. Dates are important. So here, first case, date of issue of policy is 30th March 2012, which means before 1/4/2012. Before 1/4/2012, and capital sum assured is 5 lakhs. Premium paid during the previous year is 51,000. So the question is, how much is the premium paid as a percentage of capital sum assured? That we should calculate. So 51,000 divided by 5 lakhs is around 10.2%, exceeding 10%. So question comes whether this 51,000 can be claimed as deduction under ATC or not. Answer is yes, it can be claimed, because then the limit before 1/4/2012 was 20%, not 10%. So though it is exceeded 10%, it did not exceed 20%. So this particular 51,000 will be eligible for deduction under ATC, no problem. And anyway, the policy is on the self himself. Then coming to the second policy, which has been issued on 1/5/2015, which is after 1/4/2012, in the name of spouse, and sum assured is 1,50,000, and amount of premium is 20,000. Once again, you have to calculate how much is the premium paid. 20,000 as a percentage of capital sum assured, that is coming to 13.33%. 13.33% is not eligible. Why? Because it has exceeded 10%, and the policy is taken after, on or after 1/4/2012. In this case, it is after 1/4/2012. Hence, there is no deduction available under ATC, because the insurance premium that has been paid 20,000 is more than 10% of the capital sum assured. It is coming to around 13%. Just if it exceeds 10% also, the eligibility for ATC will go. It is not eligible clearly from this case. And coming to third case, policy is issued definitely after 1/4/2012, but it is taken on a handicapped son. So definitely we are talking about a disabled person. Son is okay, is also part of the family for the purpose of this section. So it can be taken. no problem. But the son is suffering from a disability, whatever that may be, and he's having a policy with a capital sum assured of 4 lakhs rupees, and amount of premium paid is 80,000 rupees. So 80,000 divided by 4 lakhs, how much that amount comes to? That is 20%. When it is 20%, that is also not eligible. Why? Because now it has exceeded 15%. This was more than 10%, so it was not eligible. This was more than 15%, hence this is also not eligible. Only one is eligible, that is the first one, which is less than 20%, because of which it is eligible. But dates do matter. In the first scenario, the date was prior to 1/4/2012, and the other two scenarios, the date is after 1/4/2012. Hence, for a normal person, the restriction is 10%. For a handicapped person, the restriction is 15%. And in both these cases, those restrictions have been violated. Those conditions are not satisfied. Hence, both of them are not eligible. So finally, how much is going to be eligible here? Only to the extent of 10% or 15%, as the case may be. So this amount of premium 20,000 or 80,000 will not be eligible for deduction. Only to the extent of 10% of this will be eligible for deduction. So 51,000 is fully eligible, no problem, that is not a problem. Whereas in the second case, 20,000 is not eligible for deduction, and how much will be eligible? Only 10% of the capital sum assured, which comes to 15,000. That only is eligible for deduction. Same way here, 80,000 is not eligible for deduction because it has exceeded 15% of the sum assured. But how much will be eligible? 15% of 4 lakhs. That is okay. To that extent, it is okay. So to that extent of 15% of 4 lakhs, which comes to 60,000, that is eligible for deduction. So total of deduction here is 1,26,000. So wherever the amount of the insurance premium exceeds 10% of the capital sum assured in case of normal person, exceeds 15% of the capital sum assured in case of a disabled person when the policies are issued on or after 1/4/2012 or 13, as the case may be. Particularly, the amount of deduction is restricted to these percentages. That is why these percentages have to be remembered very well. And what are those percentages? Once again, for a normal person, you have to remember this 10% for the policies issued on or after 1/4/2012. Prior to 1/4/2012, the percentage is 20%. For a disabled person, on or after 2013, 15%. Only for the year 2012-13, 1 year only, that is 10%. That was an exceptional year. And prior to 1/4/2012, the amount is 20% restricted. So the percentages cannot exceed. I mean, if the premium paid exceeds that, the deduction will be restricted to only those percentages. But when it comes to the exemption, the entire exemption itself will not be eligible if these conditions are not satisfied. So the exemptions are completely conditional. Exemption would not be available at all if the premium paid is exceeding these amounts. So when it comes to exemption under 1010D, these conditions are absolute conditions. If they are satisfied, then only exemption is there. If they are not satisfied, exemption is not there. But when it comes to 80C, deduction is available to the extent of this 10% or 15% or 20%, as the case may be. And excessive premium paid over and above that is not eligible for 80C. So to the extent of that, it is eligible for deduction. So that comes to, in this case, 1,26,000. That is the answer. This can be each of them can be a separate MCQ. So that is why these restrictions you have to remember well. But in a very bigger question, small point is given as insurance premium paid. Just directly give some exemption under section 80C. That's all. That is section 80C. Within that, only first point we talked about, that is insurance premium paid on the life of self or spouse or children. That is the first point here. Now the second point is the premium paid in respect of a contract for deferred annuity. Once again, what is deferred annuity? and all, we don't need to go into that. If we start going into each of the words of the Income Tax Act can be learned in 3 to 4 years, very much. But that is not required. So what is deferred annuity, we don't need to know, but we need to remember that word. If at all any premium is paid in respect of a contract for deferred annuity, annuity is basically a pension plan. So some of the pension plans which are all there, if any eligible such deferred annuity is taken, such kind of policy is taken, annuity policies are also there. If any premium is paid on that, that is also eligible for section 80C. This is also a kind of insurance policy only on the life of the individual, but it is a little different than a normal life insurance policy. That's all. We don't need to know. The LIC and other insurance companies have hundreds of types of policies. We don't need to know all of them. All that we need to know is it is also a kind of insurance policy on the life of the SSC or spouse or any children, right? That's it. That is enough to understand this second point, premium paid in respect of a contract for deferred annuity, that is also eligible for 80C. That's it. No restrictions much, so we don't need to go into the details of that. Only headings are enough. Now, any sum deducted from the salary payable by a government employee for securing a deferred annuity. Also, same, anybody paying premium for a deferred annuity or any government employee's salary is being cut for contributing to a deferred annuity, both are same. Only thing is a government employee. So there also, definitely, it will be eligible for deduction under section 80C. Okay. So that is deferred annuity. So point is, if this premium is over the 1/5 of the salary, means 20% of the salary, there is a restriction here. So that can be separately remembered. If at all this premium is there, if it is exceeding 20% of salary, if at all, if it is exceeding 20% of salary, that the excess should be ignored. Only to the extent of 20% of salary, this deduction can be claimed. That is for a government employee. Okay, that is one more restriction related to payment towards deferred annuity by a government employee, but he is not doing directly. Government is cutting it and paying to the respective insurance company. So in that case, the deduction cannot exceed 1/5 of the salary. That is a restriction. For a normal life insurance policy, restriction is related to percentage of premium paid as a percentage of capital sum assured, depending upon the type of the SSC, whether normal SSC or handicapped SSC, and also depending upon the date of the policy. That also has to be remembered well. Then another point is, which we already know, which we already studied in salaries, but is that eligible for 80C? Yes, it was eligible. Now we are just once again looking at it. What is this? SPF means statutory provident fund, PPF means public provident fund, RPF means recognized provident fund. All of them contributions to them. By whom here? Are we talking about contribution of employer here? No, we are talking about contribution of employee that is eligible for deduction under 80C. So here, contribution is done by the employee towards a statutory provident fund or a public provident fund or a recognized provident fund shall be eligible for a deduction under 80C. Then naturally question comes, sir, what if it is unrecognized provident fund? Naturally, it is not eligible for deduction. Of course, we know that already maximum amount of deduction is 1,50,000. Same restriction applies to PPF also. Nobody can contribute more than 1,50,000 to the PPF for a particular year. And the same restriction is applicable for every point in the 80C. So we have to understand the entire 1,50,000 is for the all investments put together. But these are choices. One person may have deferred annuity plan, one person may have normal life insurance policy, one person may contribute to statutory provident fund, one person may contribute to recognized provident fund. It is their choice. But all of them are eligible for 80C. That's what we should just know. Clear? That is about some of the investments what we have discussed under 80C. Look at one example here which is given related to contribution once again. So an individual SC resident in India has made the following deposits or payments during the previous year 1920. And what are those things? Contribution to the public provident fund is 1,50,000 already crossed, already exactly matched already to the maximum restriction. And in addition to that, he has also paid an insurance premium on the life of the spouse, policy taken after 1/4/2012, Assured value is 2 lakhs and amount is premium 25,000. Definitely it is exceeding 10%, so it should be restricted to 20,000 only. But total investment is eligible for ATC is 1,50,000, 1,70,000. But can the SSC claim a deduction of 1,70,000 under ATC? Not possible. Why? Because the maximum amount of deduction eligible under ATC is restricted to 1,50,000. So first you will include these things. How much he is eligible for? Basically he is eligible 1,50,000 is absolutely fine for PPF. And out of this 25,000, he will be eligible only for 20,000. That is up to 10% of the sum assured. So total eligibility is 1,70,000. However, since the maximum permissible deduction under section 80C is only 1,50,000, the final deduction that he can claim will be only 1,50,000. So what happens to the remaining 20,000? Nothing happens. That is his money, he has invested somewhere. What happens to that? That money will be there. We are not talking about what happens to his investments. We are not their investment managers. We are talking about tax treatment. So the tax treatment is he is eligible for a deduction of 1,50,000, though he has made an investments of 1,70,000. That's what we should understand. That is one of the illustrations, example related to these investments made for insurance premium and PPF. Same way, contribution to an approved superannuation fund, is it eligible? Yes, it is eligible. Any sum paid or deposited in a Sukanya Samruddhi account. These names only have to remember. There is a separate scheme by the central government called as Sukanya Samruddhi scheme. In that, anybody can open an account, generally in the name of any girl child or any girl child for whom the individual is a legal guardian, own child, or for whom the individual is the legal guardian. For them, if any Sukanya Samruddhi scheme, under Sukanya Samruddhi scheme, any such account is opened and any amount is deposited during the previous year, then it is eligible for section 80C. That's it. So this is also just like a fixed deposit. Don't think it is some great benefit given by government or anything like that. So it is our money only. Our money we are putting in the name of our own girl children in our account, in the name of Sukanya Samriddhi account. And what government is giving us is a fantastic deduction. Definitely, yes. That is what is given under ATC. Of course, naturally, the maximum amount in a year cannot exceed 1,50,000. That is common. But is it eligible for deduction? Yes. So any amount deposited in Sukanya Samriddhi account, this name you should remember, is eligible for deduction under ATC. Same way, any amount used for purchasing the national savings certificates. These are all generally given, issued in the post offices. Anybody can just go and buy them. And if anybody buys national savings certificates, that is also eligible for ATC. Same way, contribution to ULIP plans, that is called unit linked insurance plans, ULIP plans. So if any contribution is made, same once again, in the name of individual, spouse or any children, or in case of HGF, the contribution can be in the name of any member. If any contribution is made to the ULIP plans or unit linked insurance plans, you all need to remember is these names only. National savings certificates, unit linked insurance plan, Sukanya Samruddhi account, approved superannuation fund, recognized provident fund, public provident fund, statutory provident fund. And in case of a government employee, deferred annuity contribution cannot exceed 20% of salary. In case of normal persons, if any premium is paid towards a deferred annuity for the life of individual or his spouse or children, that will be eligible for ATC. Like that, you should remember the names only. What are we talking about? Cayman insurance policy is not eligible for any exemption under 1010D. But normal insurance policy is eligible for deduction under ATC also, and proceeds from such a maturity of policy are exempted under 1010D also, subject to the conditions what we have already discussed. So these headings you should remember well. Wherever there are conditions, those conditions you should remember. When there are no conditions, you don't need to really go through each and every line of this. Just you need to prepare a summary notes of yourselves by these headings only. The summary notes will help you in the revision. Each of these investments are eligible for ATC. That's it. Same way, national savings certificates purchased also, subscription you call it, purchase you call it, investment you call it, that is eligible for ATC. Contribution to ULIP is eligible to ATC. Not every ULIP. There is one particular plan of 1971 that is eligible for ATC. Same contribution to again unit linked insurance plan of LIC mutual fund. So LIC, Life Insurance Corporation here. Life Insurance Corporation has a mutual fund. In that there is a unit linked insurance plan. There will be hundreds of them, but one of them is given here. That is ULIP plan of LIC mutual fund. If you contributed, if anybody SSC contributed to that, they will get deduction under 80C. Same way, contribution to approved annuity plan of LIC. Once again, LIC here is Life Insurance Corporation of India. You don't need to remember all these policy names. LIC has thousands of types of policies. J1 Dara, J1 Akshay, all these things you don't need to remember. Simply just approved annuity plan, you can say. That's enough. And approved annuity plan could be anything else, like even sometimes Tata AIG also is eligible for this. So it doesn't matter. A main point you have to remember is approved annuity plan. Approved annuity plans. Approved itself tells us there is the eligibility of 80C. And not only that, subscription towards notified units of mutual funds or UTI, Unit Trust of India, mutual funds or any other mutual fund formulated in accordance with the schemes notified by the central government. If anybody purchases those units of mutual funds, then those are also eligible for 80C. So how to know that whether it is eligible or not? It should be given in the question. That is a approved mutual fund, notified mutual fund. The names will be given like that. Notified means yes, notified will be eligible. Not notified, not eligible. Simple. Same way, eligibility is very clearly given with these words. You can find them in the question. Notified units of mutual fund, approved annuity plan, like that. Those all will be eligible for 80C. Same way, notified pension fund set up by any mutual fund, once again, or UTI. So that also is eligible. Notified pension fund. So many pension funds will be there. There will be a huge list of investments which can be done under 80C. You don't need to know all of them. Hundreds of them will be there. We don't need to remember all of them. We need to remember only the headings and names. Names are important here. Notified units, notified pension fund, approved pension fund, approved annuity plan, like that. These names have to be remembered, and you don't need to definitely know all these specified company and all that, not required. And a contribution to a particular scheme. There is a scheme called National Housing Bank Tax Saving Term Deposit Scheme. It's a deposit scheme. Simply that is a fixed deposit type of situation. With what bank? Not any state bank or anything, with the National Housing Bank. So if the SC goes and deposits into National Housing Bank, then he is eligible for 80C. So what you should remember here? National Housing Bank. That you should remember. Same way, that is extended to any other notified deposit scheme also. So if at all, if the deposit is made to any public sector company also, and that is not for everything, that public sector company is engaged in construction or purchase of houses for residential purposes. In other words, construction companies, we can say the real estate companies which are in the construction field, in their deposit schemes, that to not every scheme. I know a company which is asking for deposits, I will deposit there. No, notified. Sir, which are notified? We don't care. Central government will notify them. So all that we need to look at is it notified or not? If it is notified, then it is eligible for 80C. That's all. Not only that, for any other deposit scheme, any such deposit scheme is there. So all of them are eligible for 80C. So how to identify the eligibility? Look for these words: notified, approved, like that. And other things, like you have to remember these characters, like some of the institutions like National Housing Bank. You should remember that. Same way, UTI, Unit Trust of India. You should remember that. Same way, LIC, Life Insurance Corporation of India, LIC Mutual Fund, Unit Linked Insurance Plan, National Savings Certificates. These names definitely have to remember. Each of them, if it is visible in the problem, that means there are some investments made by the SSC, and those are eligible for Section 80C. Like that. Any other deposit scheme notified by central government, for example, HUDCO schemes or HUDCO deposit schemes, public deposit schemes under HUDCO. So that will be also one of the examples of notified deposit scheme. Whatever it is, we don't need to know about the details of which are all notified deposit schemes. Any notified deposit scheme, if the SSC contributes into, that is enough. They will be eligible for 80C. These are all various investments, up to 14 points. You can remember these names and all. All of them have one characteristic, that is they are all basically investments, except life insurance policy, though in India we call it as investment. But keeping that apart, whether it is an investment or not is a separate discussion, different discussion. But in general, most of the things that we have discussed so far till point number 14 are investments done by the SSC during the previous year in different schemes, different deposit or investment schemes notified by the government. That is a common thread of all of them, but names you should definitely remember them. Headings you should remember definitely, yes. Now comes an expenditure. Here, if the SSC pays any tuition fees to any university or a college or a school or other education institution within India, a lot of conditions are there for full-time education up to a maximum of 2 children. If this is the case, this tuition fees paid by the SSC also is eligible for deduction under ATC. So here question comes, is not an investment? Is it not an investment? We can go philosophically. Education itself is an investment, so this is also an investment. But doesn't matter. End of the day, it is an expenditure to the SSC. If he pays tuition fees towards the tuition fee, if he pays any amount towards the tuition fees for the full-time education of his children, how many? Maximum 2 children only. To whom? To any university, college or school or other education institution. But where he should pay? Is it eligible when the SSC pays the tuition fees outside India also? A lot of people go to America, Australia for studying, and their parents pay their tuition fees from India. Are they also eligible for this ATC? No, sir. That expenditure is not eligible. This tuition fees should have been paid within India, and that too for full-time education. Now, naturally, a doubt comes because we are studying that course. So, what about tuition fees paid for CA coaching? Because the word used is other education institutions. Any CA coaching center is also an education institution. Is that also eligible? Answer is no. Why, sir? Because this deduction is available only for full-time education. Chartered accountancy is not a full-time education. It is a correspondence course. Technically speaking, CA should be studied like this. People will register with ICAI. ICAI will send books. You should study, pass. That's all. But most of us cannot do that. So we are taking the help of some experienced people who can teach us. That's all. Other than that, there is no curriculum for full-time education in the chartered accountancy examination at all. So chartered accountancy cannot be called as in a full-time education. Hence, any fees paid for CA coaching is not eligible for this ATC deduction. What about school fees? Definitely eligible. University fees or college fees, degree fees that we pay, definitely eligible. That is eligible. Not the CA coaching fees that any student pays. That is not eligible, technically speaking. But once again, a lot of times people take advantage of the gray areas and they try to claim the deduction under ATC. Government and income tax department is so busy that they cannot look at each and every SSC's data. That is why a lot of people I know also, they claim this deduction, though they are not eligible for it. So that is the other side of it. But we don't have to worry about our course only. In general, what we should be worried about is when the deduction is available, under what conditions. One, it should be a tuition fees related to full-time education. And it can be given, a deduction can be given only up to a maximum of 2 children. Which two, we don't care. SC can claim the maximum fees, whatever he pays. That's not a problem. But maximum 2 children only eligible for this deduction. And most importantly, that education institution should be within India. Within India is the very crucial point here that should be definitely remembered. And full-time education is another word that should be also remembered. That's it. These are the conditions. This is an expenditure to the SSC which is eligible for ATC. How much, sir? No need to ask that question again and again. The same maximum, all put together. All these points put together, the maximum deduction under ATC can be 1,50,000 only. If at all an SSC is paying tuition fee itself 2 lakhs, we can't help it. He will be eligible for 1,50,000 deduction maximum under all the possible investments and expenditures of ATC. So that 1,50,000, we should remember that restriction always. That is point number 15, which is little different from investments type. And now this 16 also is little different. It's not an investment, but it is a repayment of housing loan. What is happening here? Repayment of housing loan. Once again, you have to remember, are we talking about interest? No, we are not talking about interest, sir. We are talking about principal. Interest on the loan, interest on the capital borrowed for the purpose of a construction of house property was already eligible for deduction under section 24B. That was over. That is different. Here, first of all, we are not talking about interest. This is talking about repayment, means original principal repayment. Of course, some expenses like stamp duty, registration fee, those are also eligible for deduction under ATC here. that is okay. That is as an additional expenses, anything incurred for the purchase of or construction of any new residential house property. Residential is important here, not a commercial property. If that is happening towards the repayment of a housing loan, we are talking. So any payment made towards that cost of purchase or construction of a new residential house property is eligible for ATC deduction. Of course, whatever that property is, that is chargeable to tax under the head of income from house property, that is fine. And it would have been chargeable to tax if it has not been used as SC's own residence, whatever it may be. Simply speaking, any residential house property. See, naturally, any property, if it is a residential house property or not, will be chargeable to tax. How much taxable? Finally, that is a different story. But definitely, it will be already taxable under income from house property. These two conditions, we don't have to separately look at them. That is natural that they are covered by the head of income from house property already. There is nothing special there. But what is the point to be noted here? What is the point here to be noted? We are talking about any installment amount or part repayment of the amount we are talking about to any of the development authorities, housing board or any authority in the construction of, say, engaged in the construction and sale of house property or on ownership basis, whatever it is. So simply point here is repayment of housing loan. We are talking about installment related to the principal, not interest. Towards the cost we are talking, not towards interest. Interest is a separate story altogether, but this is principal amount that is paid by the SSE during the previous year. If at all it is paid as an installment, that will be eligible for ATC. Okay, like that it can be taken, the loan can be taken from any cooperative society also, it can be taken from central government also or state government also, any bank also, cooperative bank also, LIC also, National Housing Bank also, any of the, we don't need all these things. So many are there which are giving housing loans. Any of such housing loans, if the SC is repaying, that is eligible for section ATC deduction. That's all. Okay, that is one point. And what are not eligible? Inadmissible payments are what? Let us say there is an admission fees or an initial deposit that the SC has to make where he wants to become a member of a housing cooperative society. That is not eligible here. We are not talking about that. We are talking about really the cost of construction of the house. Same way, the cost of any addition or alteration or renovation to the house, no, that is not eligible. Or repair of the house, that is not eligible. Again, we are talking about construction of the house, new house. Existing house, I will do some addition, I am taking loan on that, I am repaying that, I will get a deduction under ATC. No, sir, no. We are talking about, once again, I have to go back to the original point. New residential, new is important also. We are not talking about existing house. A new residential house property is being either constructed or purchased. That is okay. Purchase or construction, both are okay. But they should be for a new property, not for an existing property. Repairs and renovations are not eligible. Only construction or purchase of a new house property will be eligible here. That is another point to be noted. And of course, any expenditure already deduction was claimed under section 24, that is not eligible. Because these two are not related, we don't need to worry about that. Why? Here we are talking about payment towards the cost, not payment towards interest. 24 talks about payment towards interest. So these two are not related at all. So we don't need to worry about that. Simply speaking, any principal amount repayment by the SSC towards the loan that he has taken for the purpose of construction or purchase of a new residential, this is also an important condition, residential house property, that will be eligible for deduction under section ATC. Dot. That is enough. What are not eligible? Any fixed, any initial deposits, admission fees not eligible, repairs, renovations not eligible. That's it. That is about one more point in ATC. Now, next one again is a very generic one. Subscription to certain equity shares or debentures. Again, question comes, any share I can just go out to stock market and purchase any share and claim ATC? No, sir. No. What shares you can purchase? Eligible issue of capital. What is eligible? We don't need to know. But eligible issue of capital, yes. What is eligible? Whatever is approved by the board. Board means CBDT. So if the CBDT says that this is an eligible issue of capital for ATC, that is eligible. And then what you can do? What the SC can do? They can buy the shares or debentures related to that eligible issue. And that is also an investment once again. That investment is eligible for ATC. That's it. Once again, you understand these words: eligible, notified, approved. Then only deduction is available. Not to anybody, it is available. Not just like that. These are not normal shares we are talking. Not just going to a stock market and buying shares and claiming ATC. No, that is not possible. Certain equity shares. What are those certain equity shares? Those are eligible shares. And how do we know they are eligible? That we will not know. CBDT will tell whether they are eligible or not. If CBDT says they are eligible, they are eligible. That's it. And if they are eligible, they can claim, SC can claim deduction under ATC about the amount that he has invested in respect of such equity shares or debentures. That's it. That is enough. Then subscription to certain units of mutual fund. Once again, not every unit of mutual fund. Certain units of mutual fund. How do we know which are certain units of mutual fund where the ATC is eligible? Simply once again same. Which are approved by CBDT. Those are only related to the eligible issue. Those are related to approved by board. If at all any subscription is made into units of such mutual funds, if any, simply speaking, SC purchases the units of those mutual funds, he invests into the units of those approved mutual funds, that is also eligible for ATC. That's it. That is one more type of investment opportunity for people to claim ATC deduction. Nobody is telling people to do all of them. Any of them, combination of them, according to their investment strategies, they can do that. But these are all eligibilities we are talking about. If there is any approved mutual fund and SC invests into that mutual fund, that investment is eligible for ATC. That's all. Now, another point is there. This is also a popular scheme actually. A lot of people go for this in reality also. That is 5 years term deposit. Directly SC can just go to any scheduled bank. Any scheduled bank, you can just walk in and make a term deposit. But term deposit is not a savings bank account, or we are not talking about current account. We are talking about a deposit, fixed deposit. Term deposit is what is popularly called fixed deposit. And how much should that deposit be for? That should be for 5 years. So if you just walk into a bank and ask them, I want to make a deposit which is eligible for ATC, they will anyway give the same application because they know that which deposit is eligible for ATC. That is practically speaking. But for us, in example conditions, we have to just understand if at all the SC is doing some fixed deposit for a 3 years deposit in a scheduled bank, like that if the question says. No, that is not what we are talking about. That investment is not eligible for ATC. Investment in a 5-year term deposit with any scheduled bank is only eligible for ATC. That's it. Of course, always the maximum amount of investment is restricted to 1,50,000. Again and again, we just have to remind ourselves to that, but we should always know that all these ATC eligibilities put together are restricted to 1,50,000. Sir, what is a scheduled bank? Every bank is a scheduled bank, don't worry. So don't worry about those things. Any other bank, all banks in India which are working are mostly scheduled banks only. So we don't need to enter into the discussion of what is a scheduled bank and all. This is all useless. Simply speaking, if any 5 years term deposit is made, term deposit is nothing but fixed deposit. If the question says fixed deposit, don't say I don't know what is fixed deposit. Both are same. Term means a term. A time period is there, that is called fixed deposit popularly in the public usage. So 5 years fixed deposit with a scheduled bank is eligible for ATC. That one line is enough for that. Same way, notified bonds issued by NABARD, if the SC buys them, purchases them, eligible for ATC. Same way, 5-year post office time deposit, term deposit, fixed deposit, all are same. But here now instead of bank, what is there? Post office. Okay, banks are also eligible, post office also eligible. Same way, if the senior citizen savings scheme rules are used and some deposit is made according to those rules, those are eligible for ATC. All these things are eligible for section ATC deduction. Okay, that is there one of the points to be noted. And there is a point related to the notified pension schemes or national pension scheme. We'll discuss more about that in ATCCD. Then we'll understand it in a little bit more clarity. Right now, we can just say any specified contribution to NPS, that is notified pension scheme. In that case, that is also eligible for ATC. You can remember that as of now, that is enough. All the other things are not required. And by the way, for many of these things like insurance policy, if the SC has invested, ULIP plan the SC has invested, or the house property that the SC has purchased, or he has done 5 years of deposit but he has withdrawn deposit. In all these cases, whatever the time period that is called lock-in period, within that period he cannot take out the investment. That is a point to be noted. Okay. For example, if it is a single premium policy, he cannot take out within 2 years. In any other case, also there is like before he paid at least 2 years. So insurance policies cannot be terminated within 2 years. That is a condition. We are not going to do anything with that. These are all conditions attached to the deduction of ATC. Like this, for every type of investment, there will be a lock-in period. Lock-in period will be there, like 5 years in some cases. Like 5 years fixed deposit is there. That is there. Or the property what we have talked about, where he has purchased the property and any amount paid towards the cost of purchase or construction of the property has already availed that exemption, availed the deduction under ATC, but later he has transferred that house property within 5 years, let us say, then he has violated the condition. So the house property that he acquired, he cannot transfer within 5 years. Unit linked insurance plans, he cannot terminate within 5 years. Same way, he cannot terminate anyway the 5 years fixed deposit with the banks or post office. So the 5 years is the general lock-in period for many investments and many types of schemes here under ATC. So just remember that 5 years on a broader basis. But the question comes, sir, what if this guy has withdrawn the money before 5 years? What happens? Simply, the amount so withdrawn would be chargeable to tax in the assessment year relevant to such previous year. Why? Because government has given you deduction for the investment and you claim deduction happily when you invested. But there was a condition attached to that investment also key. You cannot take out this investment for a certain period of time. But you violated that condition. So why the government should continue the deduction? Whatever amount deducted earlier now becomes taxable. Simple. That is a logic normally applicable. But for each of them, what is lock-in period? You don't need to once again remember. In a broader basis, generally 5 years is the lock-in period for many schemes, most of them. So that you can remember, that is enough. So all that you need to remember in the case of section 80C is going to be once again the names of each of the investment. Second, are there any conditions attached to that? Conditions is majorly conditions should be checked for amounts. Is there any percentage restriction? Is there anything monetary restriction there? That you should check. For example, life insurance policy, there is a big restriction on the amount of premium that can be paid as a percentage of the sum assured. So that is the restriction there. Same way for central government employees, if there is any contribution to the annuity plan, deferred annuity plan, then that cannot exceed 20% of the salary. There is a restriction. So such restrictions have to be remembered. In most of the other cases, there are no restrictions, but only certain conditions have to be remembered. For example, in case of a payment of tuition fees, we have to understand one condition and remember that the amount should have been paid in India, within India, and that too that is eligible for maximum of 2 children. These are all conditions. So these conditions and restrictions we should remember, but on a broader basis, what we should remember is the names of each of these investment possibilities. Something like Sukanya Samruddhi account, National Savings Scheme, Public Provident Fund, 5 years term deposit with the bank, time deposit with post office, like this many of them, notified mutual funds, approved issues, eligible issue of equity share capital or debentures. So all these things, the names, headings definitely should remember. How to remember? There is a long list. Should write them. That is the only way. So write all of them, only headings. Only headings you write them. 1 or 2 times if you write them, you will definitely remember those list of ATC. Once again, I am repeating, out of this all sections in this chapter of deductions, ATC is the core. Definitely there will be a point in most of the questions, almost actually we can say all the questions related to the computation of total income in the main exam. And in the main exam, as you already are aware, there will be one question which asks us about the complete computation of total income of the SSC. The question may come from any head. The SC may have many incomes. One or more than one head also is possible. But in general, it will be either from salaries mainly or mainly PGBP. With some more incomes like maybe he has some interest, some income from other sources might be there. So multiple heads of income will be there for the SSC. And we have to find out, first of all, head-wise income for the SSC, total all of that. If at all any set of carry forward is there, that should be done. After that, whatever he got, clubbing if it is required, that should be done. After that, gross total income will get. From that we give deduction. There the details about investments like this. SC has contributed so much amount for life insurance policy. Like that it will be given. Whatever the amount is given. Subject to a maximum of 1,50,000, you give a deduction under ATC. But once again I am repeating, ATC deduction of 1,50,000 restriction is for all of them put together, not for each point. Each point by point, each point 1,50,000, no. All points put together. Any investment the SC can choose, all of them put together. In aggregate, the total deduction cannot exceed 1,50,000. That is ATC, one of the most important sections of this particular chapter. And in the next class, we will discuss about some more deductions available, which are also similar to ATC, but little bit different names and different types of investment schemes or expenses. But still, we are talking about the first category of deductions, which are related to deductions according to the payments done by the SSC. SC is claiming deduction on the basis of payments done by him, not on the basis of income. So these are all falling in that category where the SSC can claim deduction on the basis of certain payments. In that, definitely the top section is ATC, which we have discussed today. In the next session, we will discuss some more deductions under chapter 6A. Till that time, take care. Bye bye. Thank you very much.